admit it. You didn't think I'd be back this quick, did you? Hey everybody, Dre Harrison here, with a surprising video for you. It's been a while since I've last done one of these. Again, I've just, with the obvious coronavirus outbreak that's been going on right now, the sport's largely stood still for the last few months, so it's not that I've not wanted to make videos, it's just that, one, I lost a bit of my confidence, I'll wholeheartedly admit that, but two, at the same time, there hasn't really been an awful lot to talk about until the last 48 hours or so, where silly season for 2021 has already had all hell break loose, and we'll get into the obvious matters as to why in just a minute, but I just wanted to say first and foremost, a massive thank you to everyone that sat around and watched this very scenario right here, this hangout that I did with you guys just a couple of days ago. It was lovely. It was one where I didn't think I'd be going so in depth on myself, my time on YouTube or anything along those lines, but it was a really, really good time, and it's nice to know that you guys are still around and still look forward to content from me from a video basis, even though I've not been anywhere near as consistent as I should be in the midst of this downtime. So I owe it to you guys at least to try and get something out there for you, so thank you. Now let's get to the obvious. Sebastian Vettel has left the Ferrari team, or should I say is leaving the Ferrari team at the end of this 2020 season. It was a big shocker that came through, I want to say, Monday night / Tuesday morning, was when the first real rumblings were coming through about this. Apparently, Vettel himself had leaked it to the German media that he was leaving the team at the end of the year, which I think led to Ferrari scrambling together to get together a statement of some kind to, get their thoughts out there and whatnot, and to say, well, look, yeah, he's going, basically. And that's what started this mass hysteria. And, every video maker you can think of on YouTube has gone out of their way to, make their own opinion videos about this. And I wrote a lengthy piece about Vettel's departure and his overall legacy on the website, motorsport101.com. It's in the blog section. Check it out under Vettel, the Ultimate Protagonist. And I'm not going to talk about that too much in this video because I'm saving it in case what happens, I think will happen, which I'll get to later on. But let's break down the ifs and buts. Allegedly, Vettel had to take a big pay cut to stick around with the team, and he was only offered a 1-year extension on his contract, which expires at the end of this year. Vettel wasn't completely against a pay cut, allegedly, but only if he could get a second year with the team guaranteed in the contract. Apparently, Ferrari wasn't going to budge on that, so Vettel took his ball and went home, basically, and said, you know what, I don't need this, and declared he was leaving, basically. Vettel's statement, there's a sentence in there that says something along the lines of, it became pretty clear via a mutual agreement that Ferrari didn't want me anymore, essentially. And, this was a shocker. This is Vettel's 6th season with the team since 2015. He's won 14 Grand Prix for them, the 3rd most of any Ferrari driver ever. Only Lauda and Schumacher had more wins for the Scarlet Thread of Ferrari than Sebastian Vettel did. He was twice a championship runner-up in 2017 and 2018. And he was 3rd in 2015 as well. So he was a top contender, no doubt about that. And probably the only major consistent threat to anyone driving silver. And, yeah, I mean, it's... Why has this happened? I wonder. People have been asking, why do you think this has all gone down? Well, it's not hard to read the tea leaves here. The first big indicator of this for me was Charles Leclerc signing a 5-year extension in this past off-season around Christmas time. 5-year contracts in Formula 1 are extremely uncommon. They just don't happen. Like, there are very much a lot like MotoGP contracts where riders will tend to sign for 2 years at a time. They like the versatility, they like the flexibility, they can renegotiate for more money, and it gives the driver a bit more leverage when it comes to a driver market, free agency, all of those sorts of things. Tying yourself down for a long amount of time usually isn't the wisest idea unless there's a lot of guaranteed money, or of course you're just happy about it. Ask Scottie Pippen in The Last Dance all about that one. But Leclerc signing a 5-year deal was a big indicator that in the eyes of Ferrari, Matteo Binotto and everybody else there in the camp, Leclerc was their driver of the future. No doubt about that. Ferrari never do 5-year deals with anybody. I don't think even Michael got 5-year contracts when he was there at Ferrari. So for Leclerc, after just one season with the team, to get a 5-year extension, clearly Ferrari were happy with Leclerc's progress, and why wouldn't they be? He won twice and was, one of the outstanding drivers of the 2019 season, no doubt about that. Combine that with Sebastian Vettel having probably his weakest season in Formula 1 to date, where multiple mistakes led to quite a few thrown away races. You could put 2 and 2 together and see that they were angling to make Leclerc not just a driver of the future, but probably their number one going forward. And this situation very much reminds me of MotoGP and what happened with Valentino Rossi the first time he was at Yamaha. Now, for those guys that aren't MotoGP fans here, allow me to explain a little bit. Valentino Rossi had already done half a decade at Yamaha by the time he got to 2009. He'd already won them 4 championships in 04, 05, 08 and 09. So, he'd already put Yamaha back on the map as a championship contender and winner after leaving from Honda to go to Yamaha. He'd already had this great established reputation. In 2008, they brought in Jorge Lorenzo, another name you might recognise. Lorenzo came through the 250cc class as a double world champion and was straight in with the big boys. He was there or thereabouts the previous year in 2009, but the dynamic changed in 2010. Jorge Lorenzo would go on to win his first world championship that year in one of arguably the most dominant MotoGP seasons ever. He scored 383 points, I think he won 9 times, and he was only off the podium twice. It was, by all accounts, a ridiculous season. One of the best MotoGP had ever seen. Broke the all-time points record as well. Valentino Rossi had suffered a broken leg at Mugello that year. He was not a contender. Even when he missed 4 races with a broken leg, and even when he came back, he was not his usual top-tier self. This was the reigning world champion at the time, after all. And it was clear that he wasn't on the same level he normally was, but I think a lot of that was down to his injury. But at the end of the year, Lynn Jarvis basically gave Valentino Rossi an ultimatum. Either take a pay cut and become the number 2 rider in the team, saying that we're going to build around Jorge Lorenzo, or leave. Rossi left to go to Ducati at the end of 2010, going into 2011, for the infamous 2-year run of Rossi in red. We all know how well that turned out. Spoiler alert, not well. But point is that Yamaha had seen enough from Lorenzo to basically make a big radical shift in their team perspective, and that was enough to basically put Rossi out to pasture. Of course, they would bring him back 3 years later, but point remains, I think it was very similar to what we're seeing at Ferrari now. I think they steered away from what Sebastian Vettel had done with that team. I don't think Vettel was ever given the keys to shape the team around him, so to speak. I think Ferrari was going for the 2 number 1s perspective like Mercedes had done with Rosberg and Hamilton, and I think they were looking at any opportunity to maybe get a second driver in that they think might be better, whoever that may be. So the key question is, we're talking about Sebastian Vettel, a guy that's won 50 plus Grand Prix, 4 World Championships. He is one of the most successful drivers in the history of the sport, and one of the most important drivers in the history of the sport in recent times. A guy that's had major implications in Formula 1 since 2008. What next? Well, I'm not going to talk about McLaren in this video. I might do a second video about what's happening there, but that's off the table. Red Bull don't lean outside of their own driver lineup, so I'd expect Verstappen and Albon to stay for the foreseeable future. Well, I say foreseeable future. It is Red Bull. They can change things like that, so who knows? The only real other option, realistically, for Vettel is Renault. And I'm not sure Renault are going to spend massive amounts of money for an elite level driver for the third year in a row. They've already been hosed. I'm sure you've already read the news about who's leaving Renault at the end of the season to go to McLaren. And this is a man they paid £40 million for on a 2-year contract. And, well, no matter which way you slice it, Ricciardo's results at Renault weren't great. A lot of that, I'd argue, was more down to the car than Ricciardo himself, but the fact remains, that was a lot of money thrown away for not very much net gain in the end. It was kind of basically almost like Renault was throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck. I think if you're a middle-of-the-road midfield team, throwing big money at a big-name driver is one of the worst investments you can make. McLaren did the exact same thing with Fernando Alonso, bringing him back when the car was nowhere near good enough to fully utilise his talent. And there was residual effects on that, i.e. the career of Stoffel Van Dorn being affected, Kevin Magnussen having to be left out of the team, etc., etc. So, the only other real long-shot scenario here would be Mercedes. A lot of people have been wanting or been pulling for Vettel to go to Mercs. Don't get me wrong, as a Vettel fan myself, I would love to see that happen, but realistically, it's unlikely. Mercs haven't got a reason to change drivers right now. They are arguably the best F1 team we've ever seen. Drivers and Constructors Champions 6 years in a row. You know, they were a bit rocky with Rosberg and Hamilton. That history is well known. But at the same time, they always kept winning. They were so much further forward than the rest of the field that it almost didn't matter that their team had drama because no one else was close. No one could consistently punish them for any errors. Rosberg retired. Valtteri Bottas has come in, and Bottas, at worst, is an excellent number 2. He's a good clean-up man. He'll get you 4 or 5 pole positions, probably 3 to 5 wins a year. He's a decent scorer. He's consistent. And he's willing to play the team game. He's even coughed up and left victories on the table for them. In his own image, we all saw what happened in Sochi last year when he basically gave away a win to Lewis Hamilton for the sake of the championship because Hamilton winning that race would put him 2 races clear in terms of points scored. So, yeah, like, Bottas is an excellent team player. He plays the team game. He's a great guy to have in a team alongside Hamilton, who we all know has had arguably his 2 best years in Formula 1 in 2018 and 19. The regulations aren't going to change now for another year and a half, no matter what happens now. So, Mercs haven't got a good reason to change teams. The only things that I think that would be a drastic shock would be if Renault maybe looked at signing Valtteri Bottas and throwing money at him. But if you're Bottas, why would you want to walk away from a championship contending team? You're walking away from the best seat in Formula 1 right now. I don't know why you would want to do that to yourself. And the other, again, I'd say outside option is Lewis Hamilton retires at the end of the year. But I think Hamilton is chasing history. I think Hamilton wants to overtake Michael Schumacher, and he wants to take every major F1 record in the book. He's only 7 wins away from matching his 91 career race wins, and he's only 1 title away from overtaking him. So, and of course, with the fact, like I mentioned before, the regulations aren't changing until 2022, it looks like now. By all accounts, Hamilton's in prime position to have 8, at least, world championships, as long as he wants it. I know Hamilton is 35 years old now, so he's in the twilight of his career, but there's no sign of him really showing any sort of regression, and he's got no reason, really, to leave Mercedes. And now with Ferrari announcing their replacement very quickly, there is no room at the inn for Hamilton at Ferrari. That dream team combination that was spoken about before is no longer on the table. So, yeah, I think Mercs Like, if unless Mercs want a dream team, they want a German in the seat. I don't think they're going to go for Sebastian Vettel. I think a lot of that is pipe dream talk. I think Vettel leaving himself in the shop window is nice, but I don't think there's an awful lot of outlets that could realistically take him on. The only other one I can think of, and I have to give credit to Luke Smith for pointing this out on Twitter, maybe Racing Point with Lawrence Stroll and the Aston Martin rebrand coming very soon. If they wanted to make a big statement as part of a rebooted team with a big badge on the front of it, give Sebastian Vettel a blank check. See if that will be enough to maybe convince him to join their team. But again, that's a long shot. We are talking about one of Formula One's greatest drivers, statistically, and with the eye test, you're looking at one of the best ever. It's kind of redundant for him to drive around in midfield cars like we saw with other guys that were past their prime, like Fernando Alonso. What's the point? I don't see what you gain from doing something like that. So, again, me personally, I think a retirement is coming. I think Vettel is, 32 years old, going on 33 in a couple of months' time. He's always talked about retiring younger. He's got a young family around him. He's got 3 children at home now, all under the age of 7. They're all young kids, 2 girls and a boy. He keeps himself very private, very personal. I mean, as of right now, we don't even know what his boy's name is. You go on his Wikipedia page. It just says, his son. There's no name there. No one knows what his son's name is. And which is just crazy. That's how private and personal Vettel keeps himself. And he said in the statement himself that he's reassessing, what he wants in the future, because this is a long downtime. This is probably the most time he spent with his young family in years, because we're not racing right now and probably won't be until July. So I think a retirement is imminent. I think he's going to do a Rosberg. I think he's going to retire young, and I think he'll be at peace with the rest of his family and his racing rig at home, and that'll be the end of it. That's what I genuinely think. I think Mercedes would be the only team that could realistically push that outlet, maybe for something different or something new. I don't think there's any other viable alternative for him, unless he wants to race in other series, but no one knows, and there's no shade of that on, because we don't have Vettel on social media, so it's hard to speculate on these things. But we have to talk about his replacement, and it was announced as of this morning that Carlos Sainz Jr. will be leaving McLaren to join Charles Leclerc in 2020. 2021, I should say, sorry. Leaving McLaren to go over there on a 2-year contract. Now, this is an interesting scenario here, and one that I'm actually not as enthusiastic about as I probably should be. Allow me to explain. This is a 2-year deal, and Ferrari, as far as I've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, are all in on youth. Like, they brought up Charles Leclerc when he was 20 years old. That was massive. 1 year in Formula One with Alfa Romeo pushed him into the big boy seat straight away, and there was still a viable case to keep Kimi Räikkönen around back then, given he just had his best season in Formula One maybe since 2012. There was a viable argument to keep Räikkönen on the books, but they put Leclerc in anyway. Leclerc's been exceptional in Formula One so far. Was excellent the first year when he was at Sauber/Alfa Romeo. He's been brilliant at Ferrari so far, with a couple of real emotional, heartfelt wins. The guys on Twitter are falling in love with him, with his attitude and well-mannered, good spirit, all-round likable fella, And he was rewarded with a 5-year extension. That's clear. That's a clear message that he's their driver of the future. Carlos is only there on a 2-year deal. And let's not forget, right behind Ferrari, they have a very talented driver academy with 2 guys, maybe 3 guys, front and centre. Mick Schumacher, who will be in his 2nd year in Formula 2 this year whenever we do get going. And then you've got Robert Schwartzman and Marcus Armstrong not far behind. Ferrari's got pretty much every academy driver worth a damn in their ranks taking part in Formula 2 next season. If any one of them have a big season, when, to be fair, Schwartzman's one of the big favourites. If any of them has a big year, becomes super license eligible, Ferrari will be looking to get their boy into the sport one way or another. whether that be maybe moving on from Antonio Giovinazzi, who's been left out in the cold throughout all of this downtime and reshuffling. It looks like Ferrari have gone down the Red Bull mentality of lining up younger drivers to fill in their seats. And that's why Carlos Sainz on a 2-year deal makes me nervous. It's not a talent question. I think Carlos is a brilliant driver. He is maybe the best midfielder, maybe the most talented midfielder in Formula 1 right now. I think it's between him and Sergio Perez. Perez obviously a lot more experienced, but Carlos is 25 years old now. He was a bit rocky when he was at Renault alongside Hülkenberg, but he bounced back and had an excellent season at McLaren last year, including a podium. Was 6th in the championship, so arguably the best of the rest, the Formula 1.5 winner, I guess you could say, given how much there's a difference between them and the Big Five. And McLaren, he was the guiding force to get McLaren to 4th in the constructors. Sainz is an excellent driver by all accounts, and a guy that you would think this would be the next step up for someone of his talent. But you're going into a chaotic Ferrari team that had a lot go wrong last year, especially when it came to managing their drivers. Team order scandals in Australia, in China, in Spain where they got it wrong, in Sochi where they got it wrong, in Brazil where they hit each other, in Singapore where Leclerc's complaints about being in second behind his teammate were vocal and broadcast for the world to hear. Ferrari was a mess in 2019. I'm not sure Carlos wants to go into that Ferrari team with Leclerc being front and centre in that team, and on a 2-year deal, Ferrari have the leverage to cut bait with Carlos Sainz at the end of 2021, or 2022 I should say, and then if any of their younger drivers are ready behind them, they can bump them straight up through the conveyor belt. It almost seems to me like Carlos is a placeholder. It's almost like a get-out-of-jail-free card. You've got a pretty solid driver. If he doesn't work out, hey, it's only for 2 years. We can cut bait with him after the 2 years. We have Mick Schumacher. We have Schwartzman there. If any of them turn out to be ready or half decent, look out. They can just keep the belt moving, basically. They're going to be hoping that either Mick or Robert has a big year in Formula 2 this upcoming season so they can get him into the sport properly in 2021. And that's what I worry about with Carlos. I feel like he's almost a lamb to the slaughter in this scenario. I hope I'm wrong, because I would love to see Carlos do well. I think despite his dodgy Instagram comments a couple of months ago, he's a very likeable all-round driver and a great asset to the grid. And if you haven't seen his leaving video he sent to McLaren today, I highly recommend you go back to see it. It's a beautifully done, very classy video from Carlos in that regard, and fingers crossed that it works out for him. But this is crazy. Like, Ferrari having a young driver perspective is something we don't normally see. I did the numbers on this. This is the youngest Ferrari team since 1968. You have to go back to 68 to see the last time Ferrari had a combined lineup this young. It was Chris Amon and Jackie Ickx, a combined age of 48. The combined age of Leclerc and Sainz will be 49 when they debut next season together. Right now, they're actually about a year and a half younger than Amon and Ickx, but by the time we get going again, it will be a little bit more than that, because I think both of their birthdays are later on in the year. But it is the youngest Ferrari team, in over 50 years, which is crazy. And not to mention, there are 2, maybe 3 talented youngsters waiting in the wings in the academy, jumping at the chance to possibly be on a bigger team with a bigger role with Ferrari if this doesn't work out. But what do you make of it all? What do you make of Sebastian Vettel? Do you agree with him leaving? Do you think the Ferrari team was so toxic it was better for Seb to walk away? Do you think he's retiring? Do you think Merckx would come calling? And what do you make of Carlos Sainz joining the Ferrari team? I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and a thumbs up and subscribe. That would be fantastic. And if you really like it, let me know, and I'll do another video about Daniel Ricciardo and McLaren, and the future of the silly season, I guess you could say, in 2021 going forward. I'd love to hear you guys take as always. But until then, I've been Dre Harrison. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe out there, please, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Sayonara.